So last time we spoke, we were both so excited for Comic-Con.
Yeah.
And now here we are, San Diego Comic-Con.
Indeed.
How has it been to come back now that the show's into the second season, now that things have evolved?
It's the best. I mean, this year has been the best so far. Like, and I say that every year because Comic-Con's great, but it's so nice to see the fan base is here, and we have such a wonderful fan base, and everyone's been so lovely, and it's truly an amazing thing. Yeah.
And the show's escalated tremendously between
very
seasons.
much so.
And has the response from the fandom been like, I can't imagine people aren't excited to see these characters they've always loved.
Yeah.
Has that changed between year 1 and year 2?
No, I think the thing is, season 2 in so many ways is a beautiful evolution of what season 1 was. So the what we've seen is actually that the old fans coming back and saying this show is so far evolved from what it was, and I loved the first season, but the second season is so much better.
Yeah.
And then we have new viewers coming in saying like, I binged watched the whole first season, and I couldn't wait to be here for season 2, and it's been really, really great. It's been wonderful to see.
Hell yeah. Now, it's also... we talked about how Shakespearean it was, and how the depth of the characters really flesh themselves out, and the show allows hours and hours to dive in. How has your process with the character changed? Has anything surprised you that you discovered coming back to play him?
You know, it was such a wonderful... Again, I keep saying it, but it's a wonderful evolution of that character, because in season 1 he was so often on the back foot. He was so often trying to shirk his responsibility as a hero. He didn't want that position, and he in season 2 has discovered what it is to be a hero. He understands the importance of the mission, and in so many ways he comes out of the Phantom Zone more sure than ever of who he is. And that's been wonderful to play, because it's sort of the version of the character I always wanted to play.
Yeah.
And he has so much agency over his choices now. And the wonderful thing is now that when he's challenged, episode 6 was just aired, we see the ramifications of Lyta's death. In season 1 he would have gone like, that's it, I gotta kill everyone and I'm gonna have a crazy revenge rampage. That's not who he is anymore. It's like, we need to try and press forward as best we can. There will be a time to mourn Lyta, but it's not now.
Yeah, and I feel like the character finding himself allows you to find a new himself, like a new take on his outer shell.
Very much so, very much so.
And especially countering that with Zod and how sure of himself he is. Has that changed your relationship in those scenes? Do you reframe how dialogue bounces off him and back and forth because of your new take?
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing to see, because before it was almost ironically a sort of father-son relationship, in that Seg kind of found a father figure in this man that he, all throughout season 1, was constantly looking for someone to give the responsibility to. And he sees this man who is brave and strong and has a plan, and he says, yeah, no, I'll follow you. And now he comes out of the Phantom Zone more sure of himself, and of course he and General Zod both have that experience in common of being in the Phantom Zone.
Yeah.
So now they more talk to each other as equals, and that they're, as much as they're on the opposite side, there's a huge amount of respect there. And playing those scenes with Colin is so wonderful because it's so loaded.
Yeah. He described Zod as a fallen angel, which I thought was such a beautiful metaphor.
Mm.
How do you see season 1 versus season 2 for your character? Do you feel like he's reached a different kind of metaphorical state of being? Because they're such different characters almost.
Yeah, I
post Phantom Zone.
Very much so. I think that season 1 Seg was a young man. That he was lost. He was sort of the outsider.
Mm-hmm.
And in season 2, I think he still doesn't see himself as a hero or a leader, but he understands what it is to be one, and he's someone who's willing to do his bit. I think he's still, the beautiful thing about that character is that he's just a guy, but when he's called upon, he'll do the job.
Yeah.
And he, it's sort of the thing of, it used to be like, no, I don't want to do that. Now he's like, all right, okay, I guess. All right, then let's go.
Yeah.
And there's something wonderful about playing that.
There's something surreal. It makes him a hero that's approachable.
He's still the constant underdog, which is always a joy to play.
Now, playing the character as an underdog and then knowing you're the grandfather of the ultimate not underdog. Superman is such an above us creature. He's supposed to be. We look up to him. He's so literal. And I love the idea that you come from a grounded place to make Superman more grounded in hindsight.
Yeah, very much so.
When you think of Superman, now that you've lived in this role for 2 years, do you see Superman differently when you read a book? When you see another adaptation?
The wonderful thing about Seg, and also about Adam as well, is that Adam is unable to communicate the miracle of Superman to Seg. So Seg really has no idea who this guy is. He has no idea what he looks like. He doesn't have any concept of who this person is other than that he's an incredible person who saved a lot of lives. And so wonderfully for Seg, Superman is an ideal.
Yeah.
That sort of is vague and is a wonderful idea more than is a real thing. And what that means for me is that I don't really have to worry about Seg's view of Superman when I'm reading the books.
Right.
Which is sort of great.
So you and Seg see Superman the same way because of how he's interpreted in the show as well as in your life.
Yeah, very much so. Like, well, also the thing is, I have very specific ideas about who Superman is because I've read so many of the books and I know who he is to me. Who he is to Seg is so... It could be anything.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem real to him. So that's a wonderful, wonderful thing to play, yeah.
So I've watched most superhero shows, most superhero movies, and I gotta say, you're responsible for maybe one of my favorite Easter eggs in the 30 years. This man loaded his arms like Henry Cavill.
I did.
I was the happy. I cheered. It was a whole thing.
Yeah.
What was the impetus? How did that come to be?
Well, I knew that Lobo and I were going to throw down, and it was just like you have to, like, because Mission Impossible. I don't know if it just come out when we were filming it or the trailer had just come out or something like that, but everyone was talking about it because it was a thing that went viral, and basically I think I just had the idea to throw it in there because in season 1 I did the George Reeves wink. And I think that's the beautiful thing is that season 2 for us was so much about embracing our comic book roots and saying like, hey, we're proud to be a Superman show and this is a world in which superpowers and aliens and monsters exist, so let's just go for it. And I think the beautiful thing about comic books, and we talked about this before, is that it's all about passing on the story. It's about leaving it better than you found it. But also there's a fantastic legacy of storytellers that have come before us. And so if you can pay tribute to them, then why not do it, especially if it's something just fun.
Yeah, and it was a great, I mean, arguably it was one of my favorite pieces of marketing.
Yeah.
It was something that everyone talked about, and then they're like, I want to see the show because of how much they care.
Yeah, absolutely.
It shows heart while also being a great bit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's so much fun.
And I think Henry Cavill as a force as Superman is really reflected in the show now, and I do like the wink, and I do like these things. Is there anything long term you see as leading Seg towards, like, is there any Superman ideal that you want to slowly evolve into your character?
That's a very good question. I think it's for Seg. I think it's learning that the beautiful thing about Superman is that to Clark Kent, Superman is also an ideal. Mm-hmm. Is that he isn't Superman, he isn't perfect, he's always trying to do the right thing. He doesn't always know the right thing, but he's always trying to do the right thing. And being Superman allows him to be something more than what he is. Yeah. And I think I would love Seg to learn that enjoy it a bit more. Superman loves being Superman. Yeah. And I would love to see Seg learn that lesson of like, you know what, this is a great thing for me too. Like, being a hero isn't all about sacrifice and pain, and it's about small moments, and it's about doing good things, and it's about kindness. And for Seg, so often his struggles are world ending, and the stakes are so high, and so often the best Superman moments are just him helping a lost child find its mum. Yeah. So I would love to see Seg learn things like that. Just being a hero can be small as well. I like that. And I definitely see it as a Kryptonian learning curve. Like, it feels like that's a running theme in Kryptonians of like finding a kitten in a tree is just as important sometimes as a tsunami. Hey, like if you help a lost kid find its mum, you're saving the world for that kid. Right. And I love that perspective. Is there anything you as a comic book fan have enjoyed this Comic-Con? Now that we're switch gears into Comic-Con. Yeah, absolutely. Like, because we're here and I feel like you and I have great conversation about comics themselves. Oh yeah. And this is we talked about at summer camp. Oh yeah, no, it's the best. Yeah, it's surreal that we get to experience this as fans, but also work. Yeah, no, it is. It's huge. It's wonderful. Like, I love Comic-Con every year because I've been a very lonely nerd for most of my life, and now that I'm here and I'm a part of it, and people care what I think about comic books, I've been saving up conversations that I've been wanting to have for years. Yeah. So for me, the thing I enjoy most is just seeing my friends who actually work on comics. These are people who I was a fan of just growing up. I loved their books, and I met Frank Miller today. Dude, that was wild. That was Frank Miller said, "Hey, I love your show." Oh. That's like, come on. I had someone Thursday morning. Tom King introduced me to Frank Miller, and we talked about Superman's like translation and how he appeals to each of them separately, and then we talked about the Legend of Batman, and it was that can only happen here. Oh like, no, it's so wonderful. It's the real world Justice League. Yeah, we got to experience. It's incredible, and to see people walking around and having the adoration of fans that they're so deserved. Like I think comic writers and artists should be revered like the Pope. Like, I agree. I don't come here to hang out with film stars. Yeah, they got everything else. Yeah. This is about comic books. And this is about the legacy of what Comic-Con is, and especially year 50. I feel like 50, absolutely. And maybe I'm wrong, but this feels more like a Comic-Con to me than the last few years have. Yeah, this is something special. It really, really feels like something special for sure. Have you been reading anything you want to talk about that you feel is like a good picking up point right now? Speaking of Tom King, I'd been waiting for a very long time for Mr. Miracle to be a collected edition. Yeah. And I've now finally had time to sit down and start reading it, and it's absolutely genius. Similarly, Heroes in Crisis has just finished. Yeah. Which is truly excellent, and I always always read the Superman titles. I love what Bendis is doing with Superman. I'm so excited for his Legion book with John Kent, which I think is great. The Wonder Comics line I think is absolutely spectacular. Naomi, Dial H for Hero, Young
Naomi.
Justice. Like those characters were what got me into comic books.
Yeah.
So to see them sort of have such a wonderful rebirth, and I use that word intentionally, is really wonderful to see.
Jenny Hex is lovely in Young Justice.
Yeah.
I love the new character take on the old, and like I love that Naomi, especially where Naomi lands, is such a part of the universe in such a unique way, and I love that he finds these back doors to introduce characters.
100%.
So
also Deceased.
Yes.
I adore Tom Taylor both as a writer and as a human being. He's a wonderful person. But he writes such tragic, horrible books, and he's the nicest guy. And like, Tom, what are you doing?
So funny, and his darkness is so dark.
But that's the thing I loved about Injustice is that it's undoubtedly one of the most tragic comic books I've ever read. Also one of the funniest.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful sense of humor to it all, and to anyone who doesn't think they might not like, who thinks they might not like the DC universe, give Injustice a go.
100%.
Like, Injustice is such a great book.
In fact, like Tom Taylor, Tom King, and Bendis are all the best like gateway drugs into DC right now.
Yeah,
all their books are super accessible.
Yeah, for sure.
And they all catch you up really quickly, so you're not like, what's issue 78? Like you're there.
Yeah. And I love creators as well. Like perhaps a little bit more of an advanced read, but Grant Morrison and Jeff Johns and people who are like, the continuity at a certain point, yes, it's absolutely a barrier to entry because there's so much of it.
Sure.
But also, I think I love those writers who say like, no, this is a really cool thing.
Yeah.
Like let's use the Batman of Zero and R as a really cool plot device, as a really cool story device. And I that because as comic books are always about rebirth. It's always about finding a way to tell the next story, and very often it's going back to seeing the genesis of an idea comes from back there, and you bring it forward into a new light in a new era, and I love that.
Well, I think the archetype, especially of DC characters, and I love both houses, but I think DC characters have this beautiful archetype that a writer can find a totally different angle because it's such a perfectly formed sphere.
Yeah.
So you find a little circle that hasn't been touched yet, and you dive into that world.
Very much so.
And it's beautiful to see new writers, especially like Tom Taylor, I know from Marvel, but what he's doing at Deceased, I'm getting a new perspective.
100%. And I'm the same. Like I've always been more of a DC guy, but purely for that reason is that it all felt more connected to me, that the whole DC universe expands out from the Justice League, and that you can see the relationships between the teams and between the characters very, very clearly. Whereas with Marvel, I adored individual characters. I adored the X-Men. I adored Incredible Hulk. I loved Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But it felt much more like episodic storytelling as opposed to a cohesive universe.
Have you touched Tom Taylor's Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man yet?
No, I need to get into it.
Dude, he's writing the hell out of Spidey. It feels like an actual neighborhood book to the point you meet his neighbors. So it's
that's
so
awesome.
Grounded, so contained.
I bet Tom's brilliant at that.
The way he writes Spidey, like you can just imagine, like the quippiness, the speed, the flavor, and like the artist on it is photorealistic but still like hijinksy.
Yeah.
So it's the perfect. So like right now, I think it's one of the most golden age of comics we've had since the 70s.
I was saying this to a friend of mine, is that like, yes, it's amazing that we have all of these movies and the TV shows and that people love it in the mainstream in the way that they never have before, but really the comic books themselves are better than they've ever been.
I totally agree. And Mr. Miracle's a great example. I think that hardcover or the trade, either way, like the collected Mr. Miracle is one of the best books to show someone that thinks they don't like comics.
100%. And that's the beautiful thing about the medium, is like, if you think you don't like comic books, you're wrong. There is a comic book out there for everyone.
Yeah. It's like saying you don't like food. You just haven't tried the right food.
Yeah, you haven't found the right yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so find the right food for yourself, and also check out Krypton, because it is finding the archetype of Superman in a way that I never thought would work. We talked about it before.
Thanks,
I didn't think going back in time would make me appreciate the present as much as it has. And the show is magnificent, and congratulations. It's so good.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Dude,
Thank
always
you so
a pleasure
much,
talking to you, man.
Take care.